The NHL is back underway. We had opening night action yesterday. We saw the Lightning take down the Predators in a pretty close game. The Blackhawks pulling off a surprise comeback in the third period to beat the Pens. And then you had Vegas starting their cup defense with a 4-1 win over the Kraken. We also had some Fire Canada chants. Those are now a Pittsburgh-wide thing, not just exclusive to football. And also, obviously, the 23-man rosters throughout the league have been finalized, including the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Columbus also getting involved in some trade rumors regarding their defensemen early in this season. Now, this was common knowledge heading into even this past offseason that the Blue Jackets might want to move a defenseman or maybe even two, but this is really the first time it's picking up steam from reporters like Frank Saravalli. It does seem like the Blue Jackets are really trying to make a push to move one of these guys out sooner rather than later. The names that have been brought up seem to be centered around Adam Boqvist, Jake Bean, and Andrew Peeke as well in there. The biggest obstacle in this will be finding somebody willing to take on cap hits, even though none of those guys really have a big cap hit. Most of the league is even more up against the cap than Columbus even is right now. So you think that if Columbus wants to move a defenseman, that the majority of the league is going to have to send money back, and I don't think the Blue Jackets are particularly interested in taking on another contract in exchange for a defenseman. I think they might be looking for a bit of draft capital or maybe a prospect or two, because I am wondering if the organization wants to move one of their defenders in order to get David Jiricek up in the main roster. Now, he didn't make the final 23-man roster, and it seems to me like the final roster for the Blue Jackets does seem to be more contract based than anything else. And speaking of contracts, Justin Danforth was signed to a 1-year, one-way extension at $1.1 million. So he's now under contract for the next 2 seasons. Really high motor, bottom six guy who had a pretty good training camp, a really great preseason performance. And he's now under the same contract length with the same extension number as Matthew Olivier, which I do find to be a little bit interesting. A couple of bottom six wingers, although Justin Danforth can play center if you need him to. A couple of bottom six forwards, I should say, that are under contract for the next 2 years, and they were given a $1.1 million number for their contract extension. We kind of see a bit of a philosophy for the Jackets front office, however long they stick around in Columbus, depending on how this year goes, how the front office is thinking of sticking with their bottom six guys. You have Matejchuk being sent back to juniors. Jordan Dumais, he'll be sent back to the QMJHL once he gets off of IR with an upper body injury. You have Blankenberg being sent to Cleveland. Someone you could argue would have gotten a roster spot if all things were equal. David Jiricek, as mentioned, is a just much more obvious example of that, where as the preseason and training camp went on, it seemed like he would definitely fit in the top 4 for the Blue Jackets right now, but he's up in Cleveland at the moment. So definitely this is about the safest 23-man roster that they could have rolled with. Pretty much zero waiver risk. Zero waiver risk. Guys like Liam Foodie and Andrew Peeke, who would have required waivers to get sent down. Emil Bemstrom there as well. They don't have to. They're not taking the chance on that. And while that does come with some disappointment, I do think that probably only lasts for a little bit. I think guys like David Jiricek and Dmitry Voronkov and even Nick Blankenberg, I do feel like they will get time in the NHL sooner rather than later. It might just not be immediately on October 12th for the Blue Jackets' first game in Nationwide against the Flyers. Now, again, I do think that the reason the Blue Jackets are really starting to make their heavy push to try to get one of their defenders in a trade. I know I've seen teams like Vancouver, they're shopping Connor Garland around. Again, I don't think the Blue Jackets necessarily want to take on another NHL contract when they move a defenseman, but perhaps Vancouver and the Columbus can make something work out there with Garland being available and one of the Jackets defensemen. I don't necessarily think that's what the Blue Jackets necessarily have in mind, but it might just be what they have to do if they really do truly plan on getting David Jiricek up in the NHL and moving a defenseman out to do that. But again, at the moment, it does feel like things are a bit at a stalemate with just the rest of the NHL being so up against the cap and using LTIR and guys going on long-term injury reserve and maybe coming back in the season. But that's where things stand right now. I'm excited for the Blue Jackets season coming up. Maybe a few games into it, I'll be less excited based on the results. But as for right now, the Blue Jackets haven't lost a game yet. They're undefeated. So my energy for the season is at an all-time high. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did make it this far into it, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and like to see more like it. And I will see you at the next one.